Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on Blacks Making History Now. While we honor the trailblazing contributions of Black Americans in past decades, we want to highlight the work of some leaders in our communities. The three special people you're about to meet are focusing on the future and bringing positive change to a new generation in the middle of a global pandemic.
Tomorrow, they look at today, and today becomes history.
It's all about today for community leader Tamika McReynolds. The many programs she ran in Jersey City were always hands-on and involved large groups of teens, something no longer possible during the COVID threat. She realized their needs were even greater now, so she devised a safe way they could all stay connected. They created a digital magazine and a special project to pay surprise visits, giving away food, clothing, and gifts like TVs to needy families stuck at home.
We were able to be able to take the program and literally touch these kids through, not only through the Zoom, but we created this platform where we called it Jump Out of Cars and Knock on Doors.
Tamik Floyd, outreach coordinator for the Taj Gibson Foundation, grew up in NYCHA's Ingersoll houses in Brooklyn. He's been through it all, a star college athlete whose one mistake landed him behind bars. Since coming home, he runs programs for his childhood friend, Knicks star Taj Gibson. They organized a peace march with the community and police, ran sports camps for kids, and in the midst of a pandemic winter, turned the Ingersoll basketball court into a safe ice skating rink for the kids.
Me and my other childhood friends is five of us, that runs the foundation day to day. And, so that was my way of paying my debt to society, is giving back and, really trying to touch these kids that need the guidance of somebody who walked the steps that they're heading in and let them know that this is not where you want to be.
Dr. Chris Emden, a professor at the Teachers College of Columbia University and founder of the Science Genius and Hip Hop Ed programs, is changing thousands of young lives. At Columbia, he's training a new generation of teachers and also going into city public schools himself to get students excited about science by using hip hop as a teaching tool. Many have gone on to become the first in their families to go to college. He believes every student's quality of education should not depend on their zip code or their family's income.
By any means necessary, transforming the landscape of teaching and learning so that young folks will have the opportunity to be fully actualized, don't feel less than, and have a value and joy for education.
It's often tough to focus when there are so many daily challenges. Let's find out how they do it. Joining me is Tamika McReynolds. She is a community leader and aide to the mayor of Jersey City. She's also the director of the Maureen Collier Center in Jersey City, which is a senior and youth center. She's also an author and motivational speaker. Tamika, great to have you on the show.
Oh my God, thank you so much. I'm listening to you and I'm like, who's she talking about? Is that me?
Well, we're going to be talking about you a little bit more. Also joining me is Tamik Floyd. He's the outreach coordinator for the Taj Gibson Foundation. This summer, he and the foundation, along with the community, joined it with the police department in a show of unity to try to heal the rift between law enforcement and our community. He was also formerly incarcerated as a student athlete, came out and decided, listen, I've got to make sure nobody else goes in my path. They've been doing a lot of events for the youth. Tamik, great to have you with us.
I want to say, again, thank you for the opportunity. Give me on your platform to just tell my story, and hopefully, I can change somebody's life through my lived experience.
No, and we want to hear all about that. Also joining us is Dr. Christopher Emden. He's a professor at Teachers College of Columbia University. He's also the associate director of their Institute for Minority and Urban Education, and he's also the founder of Hip Hop Ed. Dr. Emden, Chris, great to have you with us.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Tamika,
Yeah.
I'm going to start with you, lady on the panel. Tell us about what you were doing with the teens, because you have a special place in your heart for the teens. Tell us what you did specifically during the pandemic.
Some of the things we were able to do, which it was kind of crazy because when the pandemic hit, you was like, you were lost. You was like,
Right.
What can you do? Like, how can you rock for these kids when I'm so used to being in the auditorium with them, where we got 3,000 kids, and you've been here, Lisa, you've
And
seen
the programs are everything's hands-on.
hands on. I'm screaming, yelling, bringing celebrities in, and we rocking and rolling, but then it just stops. So then our kids are like feeling lost. So I literally was able to take the Teen magazine literally from being in the auditorium. And this is not my thing either. Like, you're getting on Zoom and you're trying to figure it out. And we were able to be able to take the program and literally touch these kids through, not only through the Zoom, but we created this platform where we called it Jump Out of Cars and Knock on Doors with the police. And what we did was we actually took the program with the magazine, delivering TVs, financial blessings, whether it was $500, whether it was $100, giving them computers, and just literally randomly showing up at kids' doors. We gave out like over $20,000.
Like the Publishers Clearinghouse, when they show up at the knock on the door and you get the big check.
With the big check. And it's so funny that I laugh about it now, but when we were doing it, it was so crazy that when we knocked on these kids' door and they saw the police, they saw the senator, they saw, this everybody, the mayor, the director, like everybody showing up at their door. It was like, the police at my door. Like, what did we do? What happened?
So you were changing that whole narrative, and that was such a good program because you were so upset about what they were going through, and it was great that you came up with that. Tamik, tell us about your experience, because your life changed. You were a college athlete on a sports scholarship. You're an athlete yourself, and then something happened. There was an incident. You ended up behind bars in a state prison. You went from being this star athlete to an inmate in state prison, and then tell us what you decided to do and what happened.
Well, I would say that I never, I never imagined myself, being incarcerated. That was my first time having that experience, being in trouble ever. My thing was I didn't deal with adversity properly. Coming where we come from, we're not taught how to deal with failure, So if I had more role models growing up to help me negate through the tough times, maybe my decisions would have been different. But I guess this was God's plan. It was my junior year of college. I was on athletics basketball scholarship. I attended Dowling College in Oakdale, Long Island. And me and the coach wasn't really communicating. We wasn't getting along, and it led to me being dismissed from the team. And but he gave me the opportunity to obtain my degree still. But at the time, I'm a ball player. I just want to play basketball.
Right.
And I didn't see the value in staying in school if I couldn't play. So that I came back to my old neighborhood, which is Ingersoll, in downtown Brooklyn, and I got in with the wrong crowd, and that led to me to 11-year sentence that fast within 6 months of me leaving school.
Wow. Now, since you've been home, though, you've been home for what, like about a year or so?
I've been home for a year and about 3 months. And, my best friend, Taj Gibson, a current basketball player for the New York Knicks, he'd been doing foundation work basically my whole incarceration. And, he gave me the opportunity to come home and, be an asset to his foundation. And, me and my other childhood friends is five of us, that runs the foundation day to day. And, so that was my way of paying my debt to society, is giving back and, really trying to touch these kids that need the guidance of somebody who walked the steps that they're heading in and let them know that this is not where you want to be.
And you've had a lot of, the Peace March was a huge groundbreaker, especially this past summer where we saw so many shootings and so many tensions and trauma with the police. And then also you've done a lot of different events since, and we're going to hear about those in just a minute. But let me bring in Dr. Chris Emdin. Chris, great to have you back on the show with us again on Street Soldiers.
It's always a pleasure to be here. I just want to say just two things really quickly. When we talk about Black history, we oftentimes think about folks who are, in times past, who've done amazing things to get us to where we are. And I just want to say to both Meek and Sister Tamika that your ability to be vulnerable in this moment, to risk your life, risk your health, risk like stories that are internal that some folks wouldn't share, and say, I'm going to go out there anyway and do something to make a difference in the lives of other people, should just be commended. I mean, before I talk about me and my work, I just want to say how much that, tomorrow they look at today and today becomes history. Right. And you both, through the work that you do, really articulate so powerfully what it's like to be able to take the future in your own hands and create a legacy that's bigger than your past. So, salute to you both, truly, for what you do and what you've done and for sharing your story. And, me and my work is just around education, by any means necessary, transforming the landscape of teaching and learning so that young folks will have the opportunity to be fully actualized, don't feel less than, and have a value and joy for education. As I hear Meek's powerful story, I think about the beauty in the redemption of his story, but I also think about how many people he could have interacted with when he was in high school to show him that he was more than just an athlete. And not that athletics is bad. It's great that we have the athletic prowess to be able to do amazing things. But we also need to tell our young folks that you could be an athlete and a scientist and a mathematician and do all those things at once, so that when one thing fails, you know that you're excellent at other things as well. And I see that that Meek is doing that in his work right now. Is so beautiful, and he and I are in the same boat. How do we show young people that by knowing their genius and their brilliance and their natural ability to change the world as they are, that if they know that from now, they can do amazing things.
We have much more coming up. Stay with us. Meek, I want to start with you on this one. Do you feel that the way that when you are treated in a certain way, in a disrespectful way, and you know you believe or know it's because of your race, do you deal with it differently now than you did before?
Well, you know what, Lisa, I'm gonna be honest with you. I've never had the problem. Let me be clear. I think for me, and this is because of what with my upbringing and everything, I've never had to actually deal with that because, like Chris said and Meek said, I think it's all about how do you present yourself. And then again, I've never had to have that actual experience, but have I had some of my family? Have I had some of my friends? Have I had some of my colleagues? Absolutely. But I think what we have been able to do now with me personally, because I've seen what's been happening, is to be able to bridge that gap with our police here in Jersey City. Because guess what? Everybody is not right. Or everything that has happened is not right. But I'm going to tell you a story. What I can say, and I can commend them because I've worked with them personally, is that what they have done is literally have shown up for our children during this pandemic. They have shown up even if they didn't want to. They showed up and cut the check when we jumping out of cars and knocking on doors, when we have the police department lined up. So we're not coming to arrest our Black children. We're coming to actually award them. So it changed the dynamics of their perception of saying that, oh no, the cops are just not here to lock me up, but they're here to actually be able to bless me. They're here to give me a flat screen TV. They're here to be able to give me some of that money, that cutting the check and making sure that it's real. So again, it changes the conversation.
Well, it changes the dynamic. It also changes what you think about yourself. But Tamik, in terms of, I mean, there's not a Black man that I have ever talked to or know or have in my family that has not been stopped by police or had an experience where they've wanted to use the restroom in a public place and they were told they couldn't use it. And I mean, just all sorts of these microaggressions and humiliations and outright profiling that's been proven. How do you deal with that, and how do you tell the young men to deal with that? And do you feel it's getting better, or we're still in denial about it as a country?
We are highly in denial. This goes on a day-by-day basis, hour by hour, minute by minute. I would tell my young Black brothers, don't internalize that to where you feel like you're doing something wrong. Because sometimes if you don't know anybody, you may think you're doing something wrong. Or even with me, like growing up, I used to be tempted to wear certain clothing because I know if I wear this type of clothing, I may get stopped. I used to stop wearing Pele jackets and traded those in for pea coats because I know if I wear pea, I look more sophisticated. And now growing up, you should wear whatever you want to wear. So me having an experience and going through what I had to go through, don't internalize that hate, because sometimes we do internalize that hate and that breeds more hate.
Tamika, what about with the girls? Because we talk about with the guys, there's that image with the drug dealer or drug user. I mean, that's a huge thing right now too. But in terms of the girls, there's so much about like your body. All you are is your body, and not even the front of your body, the back of your body. We don't even see the face or anything like that. How do you deal with that with the girls that you work with?
Well, you know what? The first thing I got to always let them know, you got to know who you are. You got to be able to define yourself. You know what I mean? And whatever that's going to be, then let that be. But you can't let other people define you. And I think when everybody's talking about, my brothers here talking about the culture, sometimes our girls get a little confused along with our grown-ups. So when you don't have an image to be able to follow and you only looking at the negativity of it and you don't know no better, that's all what you're going to follow. Right. But the first thing I always tell them, don't get twisted with the weed. Don't get twisted with all the, the makeup and all that other stuff. You got to still be able to know who you are and what you want to do and what your purpose is going to be. Mm-hmm. So when you coming at them like that, don't get me wrong, we got to get real cute and we got to get sophisticated and we got to do all of that. We can do that too. But at the end of the day, I love what the doctor said about rocking with them. You got to meet them where they are. You got to be able to let them know that I'm rocking with you. We got to get out there and fight, but I don't want to fight because we don't want to get arrested. But if we got to do that, come to me. Let's talk about it. So let's bring our crew, the one that knocked on your doors and cut the checks for you. They'll do lieutenants and them detectives and all that stuff that want to do great things for you. But our girls sometimes, they was putting them in a category that they were worse than the boys. But I always tell them that you don't want that category, then don't do that. Because we got to still be held responsible. But when they don't know better, they can't do better. But when we absolutely talking to them as if we mean it, we love them, and we're rocking for them, they can feel it, they grab it, and they take it and they run with it.
Tamik, what have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned over the last year with everything that you're doing and your whole transformation?
One of the lessons that was kind of heartfelt. I lost my nephew to gun violence. October 22nd. Yeah, and he was an inspiring rapper, 21 years old. And, you know, it was like I did so much work for the community in my short time being home that, you know, at times I felt like I neglected him, you know, because I was so focused on helping others that I had somebody right here probably that was crying out for help. And I didn't see the signs because I'm so, you know, entwined, knee deep in, you know, dealing with the physical that I see on a daily basis. And that really hurt. So that's why, you know, I brung up the thing with the culture, the music, you know. But my journey, you know, I'm just getting started. You know, I was incarcerated for 9.5 years. I obtained 2 degrees during my incarceration.
Good for you. That's all right.
I taught my anger management program incarcerated for like the younger dudes. So I already was doing this work from the inside. So now I'm just bringing it out here. It's a lot of work that needs to be done, you know, and me and my guys, you know, we're built for this because we really care. We grew up in housing developments. That's mostly where our work is.
Right.
In nature developments where, you know, they're living under some horrible conditions, as Lisa always exposed.
Yes.
And illuminate that to the public. But, you know, to keep it short, yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And, you know, we don't have all the answers. And we're willing to work with other agencies and foundations, the NYPD, the FDNY, you know, anything we could come to a table, politicians, to really start some change in these communities because there's a lot of talk and no action that's going on.
No, definitely.
You know?
Chris, what about the mindset that people need to have in the community right now?
Yo, that we you know, there's another piece of all this that we have to also understand is that we are in a historical moment. I think sometimes when we live in day to day and we dealing with the pandemic and we dealing with like this summer, last summer happened, and we keep going like nothing's happening.
Right.
But people are going to write about 2020 and 2021.
Right.
Those years where the world shifted, where there was a global, not a national, a global health crisis.
Right.
And concurrently with the global health crisis, there was a reckoning with race and class issues, not just in the United States, across the globe. They were tearing down statues across the globe against white supremacy. And so when we recognize that we're in a historical moment, then we got to operate like we're historical figures. When you're in a time that you know that 20 years from now, people are going to write about this moment, do you want to be included to be a part of the legacy that changed the world? Or do you want to be those who were victimized under that circumstance? And I think we have to tell people to understand, like, listen, you can't move regular nowadays. We have this small window where we can create a legacy for ourselves that our children and our children's children will either say, my grandmother or my grandfather or my auntie or my uncle, they were out there on the front line changing the world every single day. Or they'll say, oh, yeah, they were alive back then, but they didn't do nothing. And so for me, it's to inspire those who are listening to us right now.
That's right.
Black history makers are you.
Chris, what about that? Like, what do people need to do to be the history makers, as you call them?
You know, man, I think it's a recognition that everybody has a part to play and anybody can change history. Brother Meek is a perfect example of that. You know, I will always say, first thing is this, forgive yourself for your past. Everybody got a past where they made some decisions that were problematic. Right. Sometimes folks don't move forward because they attach themselves to their past. But redemption is so sweet. When you can acknowledge your past, forgive yourself for your past, and then reconcile those past mistakes and do better, that's everything. So that's forgive yourself. The second part is this. Understand that on the path to making history, not everybody's going to be on your side. And This is really important. Right now, somebody's watching this show, and they're like, oh, man, they talk about working with the police. Oh, man, all they did was change the court. When you're moving towards the path of changing history, haters gonna come out of nowhere.
Right.
But you have to recognize that your purpose is divine and about legacy. And sometimes when you do what you're supposed to do the way you're supposed to do it, the same folks who are critiquing you will follow you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on Blacks Making History Now. I invite you to watch it again on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page and share the link with your family and friends. Remember, use your mind, it's your best weapon. I'm Lisa Evers. Let's push for peace, love, and justice for all.